We continue our development on bpm'online platform training. Today is the last third day of our basic development training. We are working with bpm'online platform version 7.11.2, and my name is Dmitry Gamora. I am development trainer in bpm'online company. Today we will focus on working with business processes. I will tell you some general details about business process creation, some technical stuff and important notes for developers. Then we will touch questions connected with the technologies of the client part of application, and I will explain you some general topics and concepts which are used for building of client side of application. Then we will discuss behavior model and MVVM pattern of bpm'online application and its implementation. So I will explain you how event model is implemented into bpm'online application pages, and how you can use its advantages, and also we will see examples. We will work with client units, and of course we will do a set of typical configuration tasks, and I will show you how to do very simple tasks like adding new fields, and a bit more complex like adding of actions, adding buttons, and using of overriding of methods, and so on. So we have a lot of work for today, and let's start with business processes. So technically, business processes in bpm'online, it's a complex, big stuff, and if we will proceed with all the items detailed, we will spend more than 2 days. My task is to explain you some general topics connected with business processes in order for you to understand, so to make you understand some general stuff and possibilities that you have using business processes as developers. First of all, you need to know that business process is just an algorithm, and in bpm'online you can specify it in bpmn notation. This notation is some kind of world standard. So if you know this bpmn standard, it will be easier for you to create, build, and modify your own processes in bpm'online. Building processes is performed into Process Designer tool. This tool is available at Process Library section. Also, it is the same from Configuration section, and a bit limited version is Embedded Process in Objects in Object Designer. We will focus mostly on working with processes in configuration section, and just let me show me some stuff connected to it. System Designer, Process Library. This section is very popular between analysts because you can easily select all the processes you have. You can switch and see processes which are started by timer or not, which are started by object signal or not, and also you can easily activate and deactivate processes from this section. For example, if you're not interested in some of base process functionality, you can deactivate it and it will not work. Even if base package and base process is not editable, you can deactivate some of them, and this is how you can do customization in that part. Of course, we are mostly interested in creation of our own processes, and you can easily create process from Process Library, but I prefer to do it at our package. because it's very clear which are the current package. It's clear which is the list of schemas, and when we add one more business process item, this is also very clear. I need to tell you some common topics connected to the business process building, and we will use as example visa process, invoice visa process. This is example very easy, but it's very helpful because it has a lot of interesting items, and we can see how it is arranged already in some base functionality. So any process is a diagram. It's just a set of steps connected with flows, and this is some kind of diagram that can be used. Sorry for interruption. So business process is just a set of steps to be done, and as you see, these steps are shown on a diagram, so it's very easy to understand it. It's very easy to see the process flow and the process branches and so on. So the process should be started somewhere. Technically, process will start even if you will have no any start event, just adding some item to the diagram, having no incoming flows, it will start it. But of course, it's better to use a normal start event, and we have several possibilities to start it. Simple start event, signal start event. Message start event is used for tracking of process events. We already discussed it yesterday. And start timer is used when you need to start processes regularly based on some schedule. So the most interesting is starting by signals, and I will just tell you some words about all of them. So simple start event is used when you need to organize process start manually using run button or using start process button and selecting which process you want to run. And also simple start event is used when you need to start a process as sub-process. So for example, if you will create a process, then you plan to start it as sub-process, the best way is to use simple start event. Signal start event is the most interesting because it helps us to organize handling of object events without writing a program code. So signal can be object signal or custom signal. Custom signal is usually generated by application or by some program code. So we are mostly interested in object signal because it will be generated by objects which are working as object model in our application. For example, we are interested in listening of invoice object events, and there are three possible actions to be tracked. It's adding of record, modification of record, and deletion of record. Please note that all these events are handled after event appeared. So these are after adding, after modification, and after deletion events. And for such events, we also can provide additional filters. For example, we are interested only in invoices which currency is, for example, euro, and the amount is bigger or equal 1000. So if needed, we can also organize some conditions which will give us additional possibilities to handle object events and do it very flexibly. And please note that signals, it's a broadcast kind of handlers, and we can create several tens of different processes having signals listening for the same object, and if some object event will appear, all the processes which listen corresponding object, and if record matches their conditions, will be activated. So all the processes will be activated. Signals is a broadcast type of handling of events. So we provided these signals, and then we use some kind of inner items like read data or others. And please note that signals, they have special property. It's ID of the record which triggered the signal. So we have only ID of the record, and all other fields are to be read by special items, and that's how we can read some data from the record which triggered our signal. We also have a start timer event. It appeared only in 7.11.0. This start timer event is very handy tool to start our business processes scheduled by some schedule. For example, we can run it every minute and some at proper period of time of the day, and or we can run it once a month or maybe every Monday. So it depends on your needs, and this can help you to start your processes regularly. Just once started such process, it will be executed each time according to the schedule, and if you want to stop it, you will have to find this process in process list and deactivate it. So this is the way how you can stop such a regularly executed process. Now I will briefly explain you some items connected with system actions. So we have set of items for managing data: read data, add data, modify data, and delete data items. As you see, you can easily construct flows from one item to another, and read data, as you see, is purposed for performing of read operations. And it's important to say that a read operation is performed just for one record. So it is possible to perform read of one record or calculate aggregation function like sum and average and maximum minimum values. And also there is a possibility to perform the count of some values, and here we have limited addition because of course in your processes probably you will need to process set of records, not only one record. But now developers have no useful tools and for processing record sets, and that's why we have only one record, and the difficulty is exactly with storing of such results in memory and serializing it to the database. And in future, developers plan to implement possibility to easy use of record set. It means set of records, and to process it somehow. Now we have to use entity schema query and script tasks items if we need to efficiently process a set of records, or we have to provide cycles inside of our process body for getting processing of set of records according to our logic. So read data item is able to read only one row of data. We need to specify which object we will use for this, and of course some conditions in order to select the record. In our case, it's probably makes sense to use filter by ID. ID equal to parameter, and here is our signal, and our signal has only one GUID parameter. It's unique identifier of the record, which triggered our signal. And that's how we can read some data about our invoice which triggered the signal. Please note that by default you read all the columns, and for complex entities it can be like 50 and more columns. Probably you don't need to have such many columns in memory of your process. Maybe you need just 3 or 4, and in this case it makes sense to read data just from several columns, and you can specify which columns you are interested in. So you can specify a set of columns that you need, and then you will see that in this case application will work a bit faster because you are reading not the 60 columns, you are reading just 6 of them and store 6 of them. And also please note that results of this reading will be stored at the process item parameters. So inside of read data item, it has its own parameters. And this set of parameters will keep results of our reading. I didn't tell you that process has its own parameters that can be considered as global variables on the scope of the process. And each process item also can have parameter. And the process items they have their own parameters, and they can be used as like also variables for different purposes. And if you need to transfer some values for the long scope of your process, probably it makes sense to use process parameters for such storage. Using read data item, as you see here, this example can be used for getting some values and also to read some additional data from another entities. As you see here, we can use results from read data item in other constructions, in other expressions. I will show you how to compose filters using results obtained from read data item. For example, we will read some contact, which value will be equal to parameter, some parameter, and you see that is how you can create filter conditions. I think it's not so difficult because you don't program there, you just click with mouse and it's I think it's obvious what you are selecting. And it's important to tell you some general stuff related to business processes. And one of the most important is that business process can be executed in 2 modes. First mode, which is default, is interpreted mode. This mode is turned on when force compile option is off. So it's a native default mode for the business process execution, and each time when you do some changes in your process, you just save this process, no need to compile it, and then you will be able to run your process. Physically, process execution is done by business process engine, which is able to operate with metadata and no need to perform compilation. This is very helpful when you do a lot of changes and you want to quickly test it, because each compilation will take maybe 1 minute of your time for waiting till you will be able to check how your process working. So Interpreted processes is considered as a better choice, but it has some disadvantage. They have some disadvantages. Interpreted processes are working a bit slower than compilable, and interpreted processes, if they will contain script tasks, they still have to be compiled. And another mode is force compiled mode. So it means that in this case, we turn our process into compiled mode. System will generate C# source for this process, and it will execute it as C# file or C# class. Sorry, I'm telling you about creation of an automatically generated C# source code, and it will contain C# class, and it can be executed by our application. Compiled mode works a bit faster, but technically this difference with speed is not so big, and for compiled processes you have to do compilation each time when you change its body. When you use script tasks, maybe it makes sense to use compiled processes, but script tasks also can be used in interpreted processes, and each time when you change them, you have to compile all your business process. Some words about additional items that we have in system actions list. Add data item, as you see, is purposed for performance of invoices. In performance of inserts for any object. We can specify which mode we want to use, adding of one record or adding some selection, which we can obtain from some other objects, or even the same object with several filters. And if selection, we need to specify which object we want to use as selection from. I can specify some filters. And we can specify column values to be set into inserted values. As you see, all the settings is done using mouse, and it's very quick and easy. You can select data from selected values from insert select statement also. As you see, you can do it. So insert data item, add data item is helpful when you need to generate some data and store it in database. It's very important to understand that all system actions that we have are immediately executed. It means that they do their operation and immediately, without any pause, transfer control to the next item. And they have no additional conditions to be considered as finished, so they are finished just once they executed their action inside. I tell this for you because user actions are different, and they can wait till user will perform some conditions, and only then user action will be considered as finished and can be execution of a process will be continued. We also can modify some data. Modify means update. We can specify a set of records which we want to update. And we also can specify a set of columns that we want to set up. Just an example, but you see that update operation can be different, and it's very important for you to understand that all read, add, modify, and delete data operations are performed with the full support of object model and full support of access rights restrictions. So if you will run your process using a single user without administrative permissions, and this user will have, for example, some limitations according to the access rights. Of course, these limitations will be taken into consideration, and business process will be unable to do some operations that are forbidden according to the access rights. And also you need to know that all these data modification items as add data, modify data, and delete data, they also can trigger some signals. For example, if you will add new invoice in one process and another process is listening for invoice add, then another process will be started just when your item will be finished and before running of the next items. So this event processing will work correctly even if you will do data modification inside of some of your processes. Delete data, I think it's obvious what it does. So you also have to specify some object, some condition, some filters, and there are a lot of different possibilities to compare and construct filters, and maybe no extra special documentation needed. I think it's a lot of obvious things how to use it. And these type of items can help you to do any data control inside your database and to do any modifications. For example, you can use add data item for creation of notifications inside, so that can be seen in our notification panel, or you can use add data items to generate some documents or some records at any object in our application, and so on. You can do modifications in order to perform some business logic according to your data, or even data removal using delete data item. Read data item is commonly used because usually you need to have some special values of some special columns inside your process, and then use that values for generating of some other stuff like messages, like emails, and values for other fields. We also have some other system actions like formula. Formula is very important tool because it is commonly used for assigning of parameter values. You have to specify which parameter you will use. It can be process parameter or process element parameter, and then you have to specify formula expression value. Formula editor is very powerful. It is recommended to read some additional articles about formula syntax. You see that it's very similar to C# syntax, and you can use logical operators, comparison operators, and Boolean operators, and so on. And also there is a big article connected to, containing good examples of working with formulas, with values, strings, date and time, and others. So you see a lot of examples here. Please pay attention for this if you will need some additional details about formula creation. Formula has its own validator, and Now you will see how it works. As you see, if the formula expression is not valid, you will see validation error and you will be unable to save formula changes. You can use process elements, process parameters, values inside formula expression, some lookup values, system settings, variables, and even functions and special date and time operators. So formula is very universal tool. You can use even some methods for abstract classes, and it can also be helpful when construction of your formula values and result expressions that you want to save to your parameters. Please note that all data management inside of processes usually is based on using of parameters. So if you need to compose some value, you usually save it to some process parameter and then use it somewhere at next steps, for example, in order to run some business logic. You see that we have several examples of different formulas. And we also have some additional items like access rights item, change access rights. This item is purposed to work only with record access rights. So it can remove, revoke some access rights and also can grant some additional access rights for some records. You need to specify which object will be used, which object records should be touched, and for each of these records, this item can revoke some access rights if they were there, and grant access rights for reading, editing, and delete operation. Script task item we already discussed, and yesterday we used some examples to work with script tasks. Also, I need to tell you that process has methods. It's a possibility to write your own program methods and run them several times from different script tasks inside the process. And also, it's possible to use some usings like this one, and providing some aliases for them, and these usings can be helpful in order to use some additional namespaces and even attached libraries that you have inside your process, inside your packages. So technically, from developer point of view, business process is interesting because you can do very customized actions using script tasks. You can do a lot of, you can run a lot of different logic here, and this is the easiest way to write and run your C# code in bpm'online. Connect process to object tool is used for debugging purpose. You can connect your process instance to some record in usual sections, and you can see examples of it if we will go to process log, and if we will see some process log records, you see that we have additional detail connected to. This is helpful because we can see object instance and process instance and then see some records connected with it, and this can help us debugging of the process. User task is very commonly used because this is not only a tool which can help you to run some business logic which already programmed. We already have a big list of items for different purposes, including calling of web services, working with collections, running some social network interfaces, and working with duplicates. But also, you can create your own programmed items. They are compilable. It's a new user tasks. Additional. user task. So you can create your own new custom user task, perform its C# code, implement its methods, set up its parameters, then save and publish it, and then you will be able to use these user tasks in different processes. So it's some kind of extension possibilities of our business process elements. There is a possibility even to register this user task as an action in our list of actions, and it will be possible just to put it with drag and drop item to your diagrams. But anyway, user task is a possibility to select any of your user tasks that you have in base configuration plus your own user tasks if you will feel that you do the same operation several times at different processes and it makes sense to program it once. Also, we have rich event handling possibilities. In processes, it's generating messages and signals items and waiting for messages and signals items. I propose you to read additional information about process management and process designer, process elements. So we are looking at business process tutorial, business process setup guide, documentation, business process setup guide. If you will download it in full PDF, it will be more than 200 pages. So it's very big and detailed description of all business process items that we have in bpm'online. So it means that you can find a lot of stuff there, and we have just a little time for discover all of these features. That's why I'm just explaining you the most important key details that you need to know about business process management. For example, intermediate events, well explained, like throw message process element. It broadcasts messages with within the current process, and it can be cached at some other place of our process. This message cannot be sent to the different process, as you see. So a lot of details we have here, and there is a difference between messages and signals, and that messages are address. They are not broadcast, and if one message is generated somewhere at other place, so if you generate some message at some specific stage, then in some other place you will wait for this message, and this is only peer-to-peer connection. But if you will throw a signal somewhere, so it can be catched at different places, and signals are some kind of broadcast event handling. So once triggered, you can handle it at different places. As you see, that signals can be catched in all processes that have catching signals. So signals is more powerful, as you see. But you need to read and to study some detailed description about this stuff if you want to use it efficiently. So we have also some logical gateways. We can help you to split your process into separate branches, which will be running in parallel, or you can even collect several branches of your processes into one. And so you can read more in documentation if you will need such a advanced business process designing. We also have sub-process item. As you see here, an example of sub-process item. This item is used when you need to run another process within the scope of your process. The transfer of data is performed using process parameters. So when you use subprocess, you have to select other subprocess, and you see after you selected a subprocess, you see its process parameters. Process parameters is the only way to exchange data between your process instance and sub-process instance. All process parameters can be incoming and outgoing at the same time. So all of them are not read-only, so you can write and read to any of these parameters. For example, part of them can be incoming, sub-process will get its values, do some logic, and then other parameters will be filled at the end of your sub-process, and they will be transferred back to your main process. Using of sub-process helps to avoid construction of very big process structures, and you can split it into more simple ones. And also there is an advantage that simple process parts can be designed by different persons at the same time, so it's also an advantage. For example, you cannot design big one process schema at the same time by several persons, because only one of them can commit his changes to the SVM. Event subprocess is used only for event handling inside of embedded process of objects. So I think now it's clear how to do it. And also I need to tell you some general topics about process execution. As I told you, we have compiled mode and interpreted mode. Interpreted is by default, but at any moment when process taps from one item to another, process can remember all his contents and save it to the database. This is managed by serialize in DB option, this one. And it is very recommended because serializing means that process will save all its state to database, and if something will happen like stopping of your application server or some crash of your application server, and then your IIS will restart your application pool, bpm'online will be able to continue process execution from the step where it was saved last. So it makes big reliability for processes, even for big processes which are executed maybe several days, one after each other, one item after each other. So this serializing is very helpful. And also please note that processes can be logged. By default, all of them are logged, but if needed, you can turn this off. It's not recommended because you will never know what is going on inside your process, and using logging helps you to understand it. If process is logging, also some items can be turned login or not, and in this case, if everything is logging, you will see your process in process history, and you will be able to see process items and their state and some technical details related to the process execution. So it's very recommended to use login. And also I need to tell you some technical details where process is saved during serialization. This process data table is used to keep only running instances of the processes. So this process data is, so here we have some trash content. I will tell core developers about it. But anyway, if we will run some process, we will have one more record here, and this is information about currently running process and its serialized data. Also, we have sysprocess element data for serializing of process element information parameters, and it is also working in pair with sysprocess data. When process is finished, its history is moved from sysprocess data to sysprocess log and sysprocess element log. This is very important because otherwise sysprocess data will become too big very quickly, and updates are often performed in this table because of the often serializing and deserializing of data. So developers have to keep this sysprocess data table small enough, and that's why after the process finished, they put his history to sysprocess log, which usually is not updated. So we have two tables, sysprocess log for the history and sysprocess data for running instances. If you want to remove some of the process instances, you can stop your application pool. You can stop your application pool, then you can find some proper records in sysprocess data and simply remove that records from sysprocess data, and cascade on delete for in case will accordingly remove some records from sysprocess element data. And that is how you can do removal of the process instances. And then when you will start your worker process pool again, you will see no process instance, and that is how you can completely remove some stuff if you don't need it. Of course, it's not recommended to do manual changes in sysprocess data table, but anyway, it can be helpful in some cases. If you have questions related to the business process items or just some common questions connected to its features, just let me know. We already saw some examples. And now I want to show you some additional example using user actions. It's very playable with business processes, and you will see how you can use user actions, user items, which will be executed at server side, but they are able to interact with user with client side. It's very important to tell that business process is completely server-side feature. So it is executed only on server side, somewhere in the memory of our W3 WP process, so somewhere here. It has its own native user interface. When it started, you can just see its history in process log, and that's all. You never know about its details, and you will see just properties and its log information. And we have possibility to use user interface items, user actions, and I will create an additional example to show it for you. I will create one more user business process, provide its name USR test UI. I will test some user interface items, and it will be user actions. The advantage of using user actions is that business process, which originally is executed at server side, is able to send the special messages using WebSocket channel. As you see, WebSocket connection console log here. So WebSocket channel is very important because it has dual directional connection between client side and server side. Once established, this connection can be used for transfer data from server side to the client side. That's how our server side is able to tell client side some comments to show some pages. So we will use several user actions which are able to do this. For example, we will do two perform tasks. First will be call to customer. And second will be prepare documents. And in second, we will use, so we can use some hints. Hint will be helpful in order to support our user and to explain some stuff connected to the current step. And also we can use connections between items, and for example we can transfer contact value from the process parameter call to customer contact value, and it means that if we will first use this contact value in first task created by business process, and the second task the contact value will be set automatically, some kind of automation. Perform task item is able to create new activity, save it to the database, and then show its page for a user. It will show the page for special user which we will set up in its options. In most cases it is a current user contact, means the same user who started the process. But technically it can be any active user which is also able to receive such messages. This tool can be helpful in order to organize several users, and of course it can easily happen that user will be not active at the time. I mean, he will just close his browser or turned off his PC or just closed the pages with bpm'online and logged out. So in this case, of course, this item will hang, and usually such items first save some data to database and then send messages to user. In case if the sending will fail, then anyway some saved data to the database will help user to continue this process in future. I will explain you how to do it. So let's save our item and see how it works in a very similar way. We are working with interpreted processes, no need to compile it. Then we just run it and we will see how it works at user interface. You see that our process is started, and now I expect to see new page over my process log page. Server side is running right now. First time it takes some additional time, but next time I think it will be fast. Something failed here, unfortunately. So we can see our process that it is started. You see that the first item is running. Physically, this activity is already saved, but the message didn't come to our user interface part. And technically we can continue execution of the process by run of item in process log. I think nobody from single users will do it. Usually users will go to the activities list, find some activity which is not started and open it. So here I will open a page. Let me see. Seems to be okay. And if I will save my activity in not finished state, like in progress, and in this case my process will not continue its execution. Let me show this for you. I will use process log. As you see, my process item is still running and this next item is not executed. Also, I can set up contact value in order to show you transfer this value from one item to another. And finally, I will set it as completed, specify some result, save, and now I expect to get another item. Here you see another item appeared correctly. Good. And you see that contact was set automatically according to our session settings. Now we will go faster, completed some result, and finally our process is finished. So you see that my process is completed now, and we have two items here. And we also have two connected activities created by our process. It's very simple, and such processes can be helpful if you want to just automate some work made by user, but business process will just advise some steps to do for a user. We can use a bit more advanced items like user dialogues. Also, I will show you how to use edit page and auto-generated page. User dialog also creates special activity, but this is some kind of hidden activity saved in database, and we can use it for asking some questions for a user. For example, we will ask a user, will customer buy the product? This is question which we will show for a user, and there are three options: yes, create invoice, no, start survey, and maybe later. First item will be selected by default, and who will answer our current user. Technically we can select another contact, and we can also provide some hint. Depending on results, we can construct different flows, and in this case we will use conditional flows. Conditional flows will work only if your source item ended with some results, or in case if some logical expression is true. Yes, create invoice. In this case, we will go to the open edit page. We will open invoice page. We will add new record. We have some default values. Okay, will it be contact? Will it be currency? Okay. And contact will be taken from the process parameters. Currency will be taken from a lookup, it will be euro. And if needed, we can add more. New invoice will be also created by current user, and we can provide some hint here or recommendation. And we can finish our process after creation of this invoice. In case if a user declined to buy the product, we can ask for a survey, and we will use auto-generated page for this. Auto-generated page is a very helpful tool because it is a feature that helps you to create forms in business processes and show these forms for a user without writing of any line of your own code. This form will contain set of items, and these page items can be of different types, and that is how we can organize input values, input fields for some values from user, or showing some output values just for user to see some current process parameter values. Small survey, some buttons. Page items, it's a set of items that we can, so a set of input fields that we can use inside of our auto-generated page. You see that we can use different types and default values. And some recommendation. And that's all. After auto-generated page will get some values and entered by user, it will keep it in its memory in its process item parameters. If needed, we can use it for for further items. And please note that if you start to construct your processes using conditional flows, it can happen that no one of conditional flows will be executed. In order to prevent such situation when your process will stuck, it's very good advice, and so it's recommended to use default flow, which will be executed in case when no one of outgoing conditional flows were executed. So default flow will be used for cases when no conditional flows are used, and this will help to prevent of stacking of our process. Now let's save our process and let's see how it will work. Okay, started. Let's see how here it will be started right now. I expect here to see it. As you see, I have special item in my communication panel, list of processes to start. And you see this item appeared here. Okay, I can start it right now. Previously, it was able to start just immediately when I was entering some other values in some other section. It could interrupt me and show me extra page. Maybe this behavior was changed in new version. And now you see that we are able to manage all the items that are to be executed. First item, okay, let's be completed. Some contact, shell, and save. In this case, our process will be immediately continued and next item is executed. Let me show you some history of the process. As you see, here is our running process instance. It has set of steps and the last step is being running now. You can also see the history in this process data. you see that this is our process instance. This is, and we have these process items too. These are two process items, and when our process will be fully finished, this record will be moved from sysprocess data to, as you see now we have 221, to sysprocess log. Prepare docs, completed, some result. As you see, automatically set contact value here. Then we see a special item, it's a question window, and you see some hint here, and we have choice of 3 items, and first item was enabled by default, was selected by default. So we can create invoice, good. And our process went to the new edit page of a new invoice page, and you see that we have some recommendation, we have hints. These recommendations and hints can be helpful because user will better understand what to do at this stage, what to do, and maybe some additional advices here. So we have some customer value, it's a contact, as you see. Also we have default value euro for our invoice. We have to just specify the invoice amount, and then when we will save it, our invoice edit page will be considered as finished, and our process is fully finished, as you see. Our process instance, as you see, 221. If we will select again, you see again we have 220, and this item was moved to sysprocess log to the history table, which is not edited usually. So this is our next process instance. Save it to the process log. Please note that process log records are not deleted automatically, so it's your business to define how often you want to clear this table and how long you want to keep old process history. Of course, if you will do no deletion at some period of time in future, this table will be very big. Now we have more than 300 of records, but of course, in your case, it can easily happen. Then you will have thousands of records there. So it's up to you how to handle and keep this table. Let's check once again and to run this process to see how auto-generated page looks. As you see now, it started correctly. Now you see our question window, start survey, and according to the diagram, we are going to auto-generated page. Auto-generated page will contain 3 fields, as you see, 1, 2, 3, and 2 buttons. Here are 1, 2, 3 fields and 2 buttons. As you see, some recommendation, some hint, and all this stuff can be finished by pressing on any of these buttons. And in this case, auto-generated page will remember all the values entered and store it in its own parameters. If needed, we can refer to these parameters in next items of our business process. So you see that auto-generated page is a universal tool for providing of input forms and some temporary output forms. You can also use auto-generated page as a good debugging tool because in case when you will need just to see some process parameters. If you will need to see some process parameters at runtime, you can just put some auto-generated page in the middle of your process body, set up some fields to see some process parameter values, and then when you will run your process, you will see, using this auto-generated page, current parameter values, and you will be able even to edit them. If finished with debugging, you can just remove auto-generated page from your process structure and then leave it as is with normal flow of your items. So this can also be helpful in order to debug. Pre-configured page requires strong skills and requires a lot of JavaScripting for its running, so we will not cover it now. Send email and approval item are appeared not so far. Send email appeared in 7.10. Approval item appeared in 7.11, and these items can also show some pages for users, and send email, as you see, is purposed to perform sending of emails for some specific addresses, but please note that the biggest difficulty of its usage is setup of a mailbox synchronization setting, which usually takes time, and if you will use especially such advanced mailboxes as Google Gmail, then you will have to turn some security politics at your account first. And so last time I did it, it took me maybe 20 or 30 minutes to set up all these settings, but you can do it once and then you will be able to perform sending of emails from inside of processes to some your recipients. Please note that this item is purposed for doing just single mailing, not mass mailing. It means that probably it will be okay to send 20 mails, but not 20,000 of mails, because probably you will be quickly banned by email server. Approval item appeared only in 7.11, and it helps to automate approval procedure for those items that already support it, like orders, invoices, and documents. So now we finished our stuff with business processes. If you have any questions related to this, just let me know. Next topic of our today's session is connected with technologies of the client part of our application. Our client part is based on big number of JavaScript sources. Probably you have some experience of building an application containing big number of JavaScript files, and you already know how difficult it is to combine all it into some solid product. Developers decided not to invent their own solutions, and they took AMD concept for building of a structure of all application. AMD stands for asynchronous module definition, and it's an idea of building an application as set of independent modules which can be asynchronously loaded and executed. All modules are independent program parts, and technically they are just the pieces of JavaScript code encapsulated as separate unit, and they can be loaded and executed independently. So idea of building of all applications using JavaScript item is based on modules, and each module has name, and this name should be defined in define function. Optionally, a module can contain dependencies list. It means set of names of other modules that are required for creation and building of your module. Each module must contain special function which will be used for creation of module instance, and this function will be called while module is loaded, and this function is the main body of our module JavaScript code. So I will show you a module example now. You will see how it looks. Any module has its name. Optionally, it has array of dependency modules, and technically it can be just empty array if your module doesn't require any others, or it can be an array containing several strings as items, and each string will be considered as module name, which is required for creation of your own module. If you have several of such dependency modules, all of them will be created first, and then their references will be transferred as arguments to your factory function. Your factory function is very important because it must create some program code and finally return an object. And this returned object is exactly your module instance, and this module instance will work inside your JavaScript application in browser memory. Probably it will be used by other modules, probably somewhere, and some other modules will call your methods of your returned object. So the purpose of your module is to return an object and to make it useful for others by providing some properties and methods. So all this application structure is a set of such modules which can be different, which can do some different logic, and including visual logic, including visualization code, which produces some HTML markup and organizes page behavior. Physically, developers used require.js framework for implementation of this idea. Require.js.org, it's a native website of this AMD implementation, and you see that it is some kind of old technology, 2011, and it's very easy. As you see, it started from the very pretty old versions of browsers, and now it's maybe even a bit old framework, but anyway it works, and there is a lot of explanation, some general topics, some let's say additional details. If interested, you can read about it, or also you can find a lot of other explanations and articles containing details about require.js framework. So we used it inside of our application. Factory function is the main part of our module. It must return object which will represent our module to the system. So our factory function is working like a constructor, and it creates object instance in JavaScript and returns it to the loader. In bpm'online, all the client side is based on such modules. There are several types of modules in bpm'online: standard modules, utility modules, and visual modules. Standard are used and they can operate independently on other modules. Utility modules are usually not so independent. They are not suitable out of other modules context. And usually utility modules are used by standard modules. Visual modules, it's as such standard module which is able to work with user interface. Usually visual modules are responsible for building of some controls or parts of HTML pages at our browser. We will not go too deep into visual module structure because it requires strong JavaScript skills and it's a low-level JavaScript programming. And luckily for us, we will discuss and work with modules working on a bit higher level, on a level when we will configure and set up our structure of user interface, and low-level job of visualization of all this stuff will be done by low-level visual JavaScript modules. So our task will be not so difficult, so don't worry about it. You need to do a lot of JavaScript coding for doing of simple stuff. Here is some examples of using of utility modules. Let me explain in the most common items here. So here we declare first module named mathUtility module, having no dependency modules, and our utility module returns an object, as you see, and this object has only one method, summary, physically implemented as function, able to make a total of 2 arguments. So it's very simple module. And we have another module, calculate module, which uses our mathUtility module as dependency, as you see. When starting to run and to load our calculate module, loader, it's required JS framework, we'll see that we have a special module inside dependency modules, and first it will run creation of the instance of mathUtility module. After finished, it will give reference to the mathUtility module as argument for our factory function. If we will have several modules, 1, 2, 3 modules, these references will be also added as arguments for our factory function. Factory function of second module returns a bigger object. First, we have multiplication method able to perform multiplication of 2 arguments, and second, we have sum method implemented as summary method from our sum module, from our utility module, and this method will be able to make a total of 2 numbers. So that's how we have 2 methods inside of bigger object. So as you see, it was just one simple functionality, then we created a bigger module having more functionality, then we can do the same several times and add other modules inside of the structure, and finally we can create very big modules containing a lot of different functionality, including visualization features. If you have questions related to this, please let me know. Visual client modules in bpm'online, of course, they have to have a render method implementation and init method implementation. Init method is standard method for all the modules in bpm'online, and render is used only for visualization logic. So we will not go too deep into this module structure, but anyway, all the program code and all the modules are available for reading from all the packages at our application, so you will have enough information even in case when you will need to do some complicated stuff. Of course, we will start from the very simple ones, and you will see that it's not too difficult to work with JavaScript part of application. Now we move on with MVVM pattern, and it is responsible for organizing of a behavior model, behavior of our application. So it is the basis of how our application reacts on user interface changes and on user actions. Probably you know about MVC approach of building of applications. It's an idea of splitting all the applications into two different parts. M is data model, V as view, it's controls only responsible for showing of some data, and C is controller responsible for business logic and connection between view and model. Developers of bpm'online decided that it's not enough, and they went further and decided to use MVVM pattern. It has similar idea, but with more strict connections between the items. So we have, as in MVC, we have model, which represents fundamental data, and also some business logic connected only to data, like business logic for calculation of amount based on quantity and price. As well as in MVC, we have view, responsible for showing of data. It's a user interface part, usually it's a controls at our page. And we have view model part, responsible for business logic, responsible for connection between view and model data. And in MVVM it is organized as view model represents abstraction of in view from one hand, and from the other it's a wrapper over model data. So view model can be used for control of data and for control of the view items. And we use data binding as the main condition for building of MVVM pattern. This binding helps us to do some kind of automatical notification and changes between view and model, and I will show you example of these bindings. We have examples of event bindings and property bindings. In bpm'online, MVVM is implemented. As you know, model is ORM data model. It means entity. At the client side of our application, we also have entities implemented as JavaScript object. They are not visual, so they are just existing in memory, but they can store data and they can be used for data management. So model is such JavaScript objects at client side. View, its UI items inherited from TerraSoft component class, and these items can be just simple input fields or maybe grids, labels, buttons, and so on. View model is a set of classes inherited from base view model class. It's a class implementing our MVVM pattern, and it has links for model columns, and it has references to view items, and it uses binding for connection between all of them. I will show you examples of these bindings. View model has attributes to manage data, it's a fields, and it has methods, it's a JavaScript functions, to perform some business logic and also to perform event handling. We have standard methods in view model, it's a get to get some field values, and set, as you see, to set some field values. If you will create your own controls, probably you will need to get more knowledge about bindings, and we have several types of bindings. It's a property binding, when we have some property and special method connected with it, and event binding, which we have event name and the method connected with its which performs implementation or just event handling of currently selected event. Property binding is two-directional. I will explain a bit later what is it. And event binding is one-directional. It means that only if event appeared, our method is executed. I will explain you two-way binding for properties when we will work with examples. Modules can exchange data, but modules are independent and we need special mechanism to perform this data exchange. And this mechanism of data exchange was called messaging mechanism. We have some central point called sandbox, and this is some kind of dispatcher. This dispatcher can hold list of subscribers. Each module can subscribe for some specific messages. It means subscribing means telling the central dispatcher that your module is able to process some business logic, to accept some data and return some results. So the most important for message is message code with just a string constant. And different messages are can be differed by this string code. So subscribing means telling the system that your module can be do some business logic and special method will be executed. And publishing, it's asking a system to run some specific functionality. One module can publish some message, another module can subscribe on it and can execute some business logic according to the publishing of message. And two modules do not know each other, they have no references to each other, they are independent. Only sandbox knows who is publishing and who is subscriber. There are different types of messages. It's a broadcast messages. It means then once published it will be let's say processed at different modules and at different places. So it can be broadcast messages, and in this case return of result values is not guaranteed. And address messages are usually once published and once subscribed from one module to another you can transfer some data, and which is more important, to get some result. So address messages guarantees some result values. We will see messaging mechanism at one of our example. I will show you how to use one of the messages to show a new page over present one. And also I will show you a lot of examples for these messages. Now I will just tell you that if you're really interested, you can go to our application code, to all the JavaScript sources, and try to search for all GS sources for sandbox subscribe. You can see more than 400 subscriptions. Okay, 389 subscriptions, and you see that it's very commonly used. So subscription for different message codes, and for this code it means that some function will be executed. We have more than 300 examples of it, and in some cases it can be very complex logic. So if needed, you can find a lot of examples. And also the same, you can find a lot of examples for publishing. Publishing is more popular because one subscriber usually is addressed by different publishers. And you see that we have a lot of examples of publishing. Publishing means executing, means running some business logic. So we are asking Sandbox to run specific method connected with this code, with message code, get scheduler selection pressed keys. It's just an example, providing some arguments, additional parameters, and as a result, some business logic will be executed. As example, we can see that this code is subscribed somewhere. We can search all examples where we have the same code. So here is publishing, and here is subscription. No, it's just a virtual column, and this is subscription for message, and here is real code which performs real subscription. Sandbox subscribe, then this message code. And please note, developers usually use just a simple string constants to declare message codes, and that's why it's easy to search through all the sources. They will never use some variables here. Of course they could, but in order to make it simple and easy to read, they usually use directly these message constants here, and this usually helps to easily find all the places where some message is used or subscribed. And physically, this module will run get scheduler selection pressed keys method if some other module will publish this message. So it's a bit advanced material, maybe not for the very beginners, but anyway you will use it when you will start to do some complex customizations. Now we will discuss some stuff related to client modules, and then we will go and have some rest. So client modules in bpm'online. They are used to declare modules and store them in our configuration. So we have package, and we have possibility to create new client modules, or we also have possibility to create replacing client modules. Very similarly as replace an object works, replacing client module will declare only some changes to the common module structure of some entity already declared somewhere in previous other packages. So simple module is introducing of new client module instance in our configuration. Replacing client module is information only about changes of some existing item. So you have to differ from the very beginning. You have to differ these two types of modules, because it's very important for you to understand what you are looking at. Module created from zero, or replacing client module, adding some items for existing ones. We have a lot of different client modules in our application. We can set up column and to see manager name, which is just a schema type information, and as you see client unit, trying to open it. So you see here is an example of client module. Replace parent option is turned off. It means that our module is created from zero. Usually it is used inheritance from some of the base parent module. In our case, it's base module page v2, which is standard module for edit pages of section. Each module has name. It should be the same as the name inside defined function. And each module has a localizable title. Of course, we have package reference, and each module can have set of localizable values and some other stuff. But the most important part of the module is JavaScript code. JavaScript code contains defined word, because it's mandatory for AMD concept. Module name equal to the module name of in our schema, and probably it's optionally array of dependency modules. If specified, we can have references for these module instances at our factory function. Our factory function must return some object, and this object can contain different properties. Of course, some of these properties are standard, because other modules which are used to process our client interface modules, they expect that our modules will have some specific properties, and that's why we cannot type random code here. But soon you will see that it's not so difficult, and you will see that no need to remember a lot of this stuff by heart. Inside of this module we have set of properties like attributes, details, methods, it's set of additionally specified functions. As you see, this is pure JavaScript code. And div array, which contains information about user interface settings. Now it's very important to tell you that all user interface in bpm'online is based on these div configuration objects. Div stands from difference. So this is set of items that should be added to current page structure, or a set of instructions for modifications in page structure. For example, operation insert means that we want to add one more item to user interface, and mostly this configuration object is some kind of configure file for a low-level JavaScript sources. Low-level modules can process this config object and physically perform implementation of HTML changes, DOM items, and behavior setup for user interface controls. Each div array item means insert or update of a control on the page. And controls can be different. It can be just input fields, it can be labels, it can be containers, and a lot of other stuff. And probably you are a bit frightened of this structure, because you will think that to add new item to user interface you need to remember this stuff by heart. No need to remember this stuff, because we have modern tools that help you to insert these items without typing this code manually. Of course, in some places probably you will need to do some fixes or even copy and paste pieces, but anyway, no need to remember it, and I will show you a set of examples. You will see that it's a bit not so difficult to do, not so difficult to create your user interface stuff. The number of user interface items is big in our configuration, so we have a lot of different client units. Some of them are responsible for edit page logic, some of them responsible for grid pages, and some of them are just simple modules like business rule module, and they are just responsible for doing some business logic which has no any user interface at all. This client module structure was created by more than 100 of developers during more than 3 years, so no need to, and no need to try to understand all the stuff how it works. I will explain you some basics and common stuff for you to know how to do customizations of user interface. First of all, you need to understand how you need to differ two types of client modules. It's an originally created module and replacing client module. This can be done very easily, because each time when you edit any client module, you can see its settings, and you see that replace parent is turned off. It means that our item is created from zero, and moreover this item seems to be created without parent object, and you see that we also have possibility to specify less property for CSS settings. Using client modules also supported work with CSS. We have some part of it. Let me show you. A lot of CSS settings we have, and if you need to customize these styles, You can also do creating of replacing client module for the same name, and you have to customize CSS settings on the Less tab. This will help you to construct your own style changes in your application and to make system look different than usual styles as you see in our application. Now let's do some pause in 20 minutes, and then we will continue with typical configuration tasks and a lot of examples working with client-side customizations. Our current topic is typical configuration tasks. Thank you, George. And we will discuss different topics connected with customizations of user interface. Of course, we will start from very simple ones like adding of new fields. Then I will explain you how to add actions and buttons. And also we will discuss processing of additional logic like creating of computed fields and calculation on client side. And also probably we'll have some time to discuss other topics connected with it. It's okay. So let me show you examples of how you can easily add new fields to edit pages and how it will be programmed in our JavaScript client modules. For each example, we have very good explanation of these cases at our documentation development guide. Development cases, page configuration, and control elements. And for example, adding new field to the edit page. Here is step-by-step manual for manual creation of new field to some existing entities. And I will use more simplified approach. I will use section wizard for this. Before we will run section wizard, we need to check our current package system setting. System settings, current package. It is important to check because otherwise after section wizard it's a bit harder to revert all the changes done by section wizard, so it's easier just to make sure that everything is correct before we will start section wizard. And our current package will point to the package which will be used for section wizard to save its changes. In our case, we are interested to save in changes and to our developer package. And the first task which we will do is adding of new columns to user interface. As you remember, yesterday we worked with our contact object. We already added replacing object. So you remember replacing object for a contact entity, and we added 2 new columns to the common contact entity, or even 3 columns as you see here. And now our task is to represent these columns at user interface. This can be done very easily, opening a contact page, view, running section wizard. You can try to reproduce the same on your own demo website. Probably you will need a bit more time just to look at this editor, and you will also have home tasks to play with it. So editor is opened. Our task is to add new columns. Let's set up these columns on the current employment tab. I don't want to use contact info because it has some additional logic for fields visibility, and I try to avoid unnecessary complexity now. So we have several columns already added to the existing columns list, and that's how we can do taking this secret word and just dragging and dropping, then start date, and also we have preferred car engine type. Good. After we did such drag and drop changes, as you see, it's very easy. We can save our changes, and this will be done quickly because of no need to do configuration changes on the object level. So section wizard will not modify object, it will modify only client module part. And now let's look what is going on the client module stuff. Let me check display system columns, modified on. As you see, contact page v2 was just recently modified a minute ago. Okay, let it be here, it will be on the top. And we can see its code, what was changed there. If you have any questions related to this, please let me know. Section wizard works good, but not perfect. And it has some, let's say, disadvantages, and probably developers will eliminate them in future. First disadvantage is that it saves some extra items which were not really changed during our editing session. We didn't change photo, time zone, container, account name, job title, and so on. So there are a lot of extra div array items here which we didn't really change and merged and moved, so we didn't touch them at all. And we can remove everything except of insert. You see 3 insert operations, and then I also have some set of unused items, and we will remove them. So why I'm doing so? Because I just want to see at replacing client module only that part that was really changed. And section wizard has some probably inner mistakes, and that's why it saves a bit more than we need. So it's just for your understanding and for your clear vision of what we are doing. The next disadvantage is big number of indentation warnings, and if we will select all this data and shift 2 times to the right, we have no errors at all. Now I will explain what we are looking at. Here is contact page v2 replacing client module. Replacing client module is additional information about our client module of existing entity, and this information contains just changes and overrides some properties of our client module. We have a lot of replacing client modules for contact page v2 in base configuration, and this is one more addition to it. Our replacing client module contains set of properties, but the most important is div array item. Div array contains changes and customizations of user interface part. Each change is coded into a configuration object in JavaScript, and this configuration object has a set of properties and values showing which items should be added, which properties, and I can explain you some part of it. Operation means that type of change that will be done with user interface. Insert means add of new user interface item. Name is it's a name of div item of HTML markup, values set of its properties, layout, its information about size and position, and the call span its width marked in cells. Each cell is one of the 24 parts of the horizontal width of the container. Row span it's a vertical height, column it's a left position of the item, and row this is so column is the position on the horizontal direction, and row it's a position in vertical from up to down direction. Layout name it's a parent container name which is used to put our control into. Bind to is the most important property of the control because it shows real view model column which is used for as a source for value of our control, and also the source for the type of our control. Depending on the type of this column, we will see different controls. For example, for date, we will see date and time control. For secret word, we will see string control, and for lookup field, we will have control with drop-down list. So each type of the control is very dependent from the type of the view model column associated with this control. Parent name, as you see, is the name of the parent container which is used to put our column, and that's almost all. So when we finish to beautify our code, we can save it. Technically, we cannot do anything, so we can do nothing here, and anyway it will work. But I think it's better for you to see how you can efficiently use embedded code validation tool and how you can easily remove that items that you really don't need inside of your replacing client module code. So after you finished, we can check how it works just simply running F5 button at our browser page. F5 correctly invalidates browser cache, and if we change this item using embedded editor, F5 is enough. If we would use external editor in development in file system mode, for example WebStorm or Sublime Text, in this case we will have to run F12 button and right button click on the refresh button of the browser and select empty cache and hard reload option in order to properly clear browser cache in case when we develop our code using external editor. So let's go to current deployment tab, and here you see all three new columns. Here is secret word, here is some start date, and here is preferred car engine type. These are normal fields. As you see, you can save it and they are working good. So you'd see that adding of new fields is a very easy task. After finished, you have to download packages to the file system. If anything we have changed. Okay, and also we can commit our changes. just to make sure that everything was submitted correctly. As you see, a lot of items here was because of we recently created new section and didn't commit it to the SVN. Okay, so here you see that adding of new columns is not so difficult. Of course, technically, you can create your own replacing client module. You can do all that steps manually, but it's very difficult and you will have to remember this stuff by heart. I think it's no need to do it, and if you can use section wizard for this stuff, I think you have to use section wizard because it will create the same job, it will do the same steps, and with much less errors and much faster. Next topic is adding an action to the edit page, and I want to make this this example as your home task. So I will show you what to do and how to do this example. We have an article at our Academy website focused on actions to edit pages, and here is common explanation, example of registering of actions, and step-by-step case description for adding a new section according to the article. So it will be your home tasks. If you have enough time to do it, I think you will get additional experience and knowledge to work with this article and reproduce step by step, and it will help you to practice and to see how actions are registered and how they are working. I will show you another example connected with buttons on edit pages and in different modes. Working with buttons is a bit different because usually buttons are placed at the top part of our section, somewhere here. Technically, you can add button at any place you want, but generally buttons are recommended to put here, and there is a small difficulty with them because buttons are different when we add new record and when we edit existing record. Let me turn off mini pages first. System settings. Enable mini pages, contact mini page, turn off, and account mini page, turn off. These system settings are cached, that's why we have to exit. Then we have to log in again. And only in this case we will be able to see that for new record we have full size edit page. And let me explain with the difference. For adding of new record, edit page is spread through all the area of our work page, and the button which we will add somewhere here is part of edit page client module. But if we will add the button to the existing record page, you will see that at edit mode, edit page starts here and ends somewhere here. And buttons are out of edit page structure, they are at section page structure. This part is section page, that's why we have to add button to the section client module in case if we want to see it in edit mode of the edit page. So I will do it step by step, don't worry. And we have good article related to buttons, adding a button to the edit page, and this article explains how to create button, how to specify its properties, which are different property descriptions. And first of all, we will add some button to the edit page in new record add mode. This is very easy. So we will create replacing client module, then we will use localizable strings and so on. Let me show you how to quickly create replacing client module for a section. We will just go to the section, open its edit page, and run section wizard. In section wizard, we will do no changes at all and just saving it. We need it for making of replacing client module the fastest way, and section wizard is able to help with it. Technically, we can follow this manual and create this code manually, but it's not a good idea because section wizard has also its own comments inside program code, and these comments are important for next running of section wizard because they are working as markers for the proper places of code which can be located by section wizard and which will be replaced with the proper set of items made by section wizard. So after section wizard change, we will fix this code, removing of all unnecessary items. And here is ideal stuff how our replacing client module should look if we will do no changes in user interface. We will have to perform step by step, and first of all we got replacing client module, then we will start to work with creating a localizable string for button caption. We will create a button for opening a contact which specified in primary contact field of an account edit page. So select localizable strings and we do it just for button caption. Open contact button caption. It will be the name of our localizable string and the value will be open contact. Okay. Then I have to create some methods for our button. First method will be used for defining of a state of our button, is it will be active or not. And second method will be used as handler for its click event. We just copy this code and paste it to our methods collection. You see there are spaces, we need to convert 4 spaces into tabs, and you see shifts needed. Fixed. Okay, so first method will be used for getting of a primary contact value, and if we get something here, so if we get something here, then we will return true, otherwise false. Another method will be a handler for the click event. Button click handler method. It will take the primary contact value. Please note that this primary contact field is the lookup field, and that's why we will get the object as a result, and it will have several properties, ID and also value. It will be ID of the record, and display value will be text value that is shown for user. We are interested in ID, and here we are starting to construct URL, and then we are using sandbox mechanism and publishing the message to start some special logic for showing of another page over present one. This message code is push history state, and it's used commonly for opening additional pages over present one. Let me show you a lot of examples. Sandbox, publish, push history state. You will see more than 20 examples, so 142 times publishing of this event was used. As you see, this is very common tool, very commonly used approach to show some additional pages, showing some additional cards from our currently selected page. So you see more than 100 examples, so it's maybe event number 1 between all the events, because between all the messages, because it's too often used. Okay. And frankly speaking, from this code we don't really know which real module will finally show our another page, but Sandbox only knows it. Also, we need div array item for our button, and we will just copy and paste it from the manual at Academy side. Of course, you will ask how we would know about this item if we will have no manuals. In this case, the only advice is to look at base program code and to find examples of already existing items like buttons, and just copy and paste their implementation. Here you see that our button is added as new item to the div array to the left container. Let me explain what left container is. When we add new item, right button click, inspect, we will see list of items, and we will be able to focus on some parts of it. As you see, this div, it's a container, its ID has prefix account page with 2, then left container is name, then container is suffix. That's how you may find the proper container or part of the page to put your items to. Property names, our button, and here is our localizable string name. We should use it here with the caption, and click event will be connected with the method. This is one-way binding. Events are bound in one-way binding. It means only if click event appears, our method will be executed. Enabled property is bound with two-way binding. It means that when system needs this property value, it will run our method. But due to our method is referencing to the columns of our view model, special program code is able to analyze it and to get information which columns are used inside of our program code of our method body. And this special code is able to create subscriptions for the changes of some columns, and if any of involved columns will be changed that are presented in the method connected with the property, in this case our property value will be recalculated and method will be executed. So we didn't program changing of a primary contact fields and tracking these changes and running our method and reassigning of the enabled property, but this automatical two-way binding significantly helps us with it and prevents us from writing additional code which takes just time and makes it a bit complex. So this two-way binding for properties works good, and I will show you how this works. If you have questions related to this, please let me know. And unfortunately, settings for the buttons location are not supported, and that's why we will just remove it from here. Okay, seems to be enough. Let's save our code, and now we will see how our button looks, but only for add mode, because for editing mode it used another part of page. F5 button. As you see, new button appeared, but only for add mode. For edit mode, we see no buttons at all, because this mode has different set of active containers. Okay, add button, add mode, you see button, and if primary contact is empty, button is disabled. If we will select some primary contact value, button was enabled. So we didn't program it specially, but our view model column binding works good for us, and property binding is two-directional, and it means that if something changes that was used inside of the program code of our method responsible for the property, if any change appears, our property is recalculated. As you see, just after we made primary contact field in, our button automatically became active. Good. We can check how it works. And you see that contact page is opened over previous account page. So it works good only for add mode, but also, of course, you will need the same button for edit mode. Let me explain how to do it with edit mode. How to add a button to existing record edit page. Almost the same, but we need to create replacing client module for accounts section. How to do it quickly? As usual, we will use section wizard for this. We will run account section, view, open section wizard, and do no changes and just save. In this case, section wizard will create replacing client module for section page. It will do it perfectly without any special let's say disadvantages or shortcomings, and we can see this code here. Count section with 2. Good. This is ideal result from section wizard, and We will follow this article. As usual, we will add localizable string. And as usual, we will add methods for our button processing. This method should be improved a bit. So first of all, we will check that how our button is enabled or disabled. We will just get active row, and if we have it, we will check the primary contact value. If we have something in this field, then we will return true, and within any other we will return false. When we will click on our button, we will start to work, and you see that it's not good when we using a lot of dots in one expression. I will make it a bit easier to read. And finally, we will use this primary contact ID for creation of our URL. And then we will use the same sandbox publish method to ask some module to show another page over present one. We constructed URL and addressed it as parameters when running our publish method. As usual, we need div array item for the button. As you see, I don't remember it by heart. And even if I would have no articles, I would try to steal some code from base program sources. I think it's much smarter than do it manually or remember it by heart. No errors, good. So this div array item puts our button to existing record page. I don't like one of these points here, and it seems that, okay, let me check again. New record page mode, we have parent property is left container, good. But for existing record page, we have, it seems that I just missed and copied from the wrong place. I can't believe how it's possible. So I just did it the wrong way, and this is add button existing record page, and my code should contain div array item from this one. Okay, copy, paste. Yeah, parent name is correct here. 4 spaces into tabs, good. And let's just fix it. Good, validate, no problem. So parent name is properly set. You see this long name of our container. It can be taken when we will open in edit mode. Right button click, inspect. Then we will see different containers, and this one is that we are interested in. Count section v2, it's a prefix, then long name, then container is suffix. So we have to use this long name as the place where we put our control2. Property name, our button, name of the localizable string as caption, click event connected with our method, enabled connected with another method. No settings for location of the buttons supported. And validate our code, no errors, good. As usual, enabled property has two-way binding. Directly when system needs this property, our method will be called, but also if anything will be changed, active row or grid data or primary contact, our property will be recalculated and our method will be called again. When a user clicks on the button, our method will be called, and if active row is assigned, then we started to calculate it, and now you will see how it works. Go to edit mode. As you see, our button appeared. Depending on a selected account, as you see, if account has primary contact, technically we read this value from the grid. If we have this value, we see that button is enabled. If no primary contact, button is disabled. Each time when currently selected record is changing, we see that our button changes its state. When we click on it, you will see opening of edit page. We can close it and return to selection of the grid. Also, I wanted to show you how to debug with browser tools of the client side. I will use simply Google Chrome tools, F12, it's opening developer console. go into sources, Control P, account, section v2, then Control F. You see that total structure of this code is complex, and its parts are consisting of our items, including our replacing client module. Here it is. We can put debugger here, and now we can debug line by line. And it's very easy. You see all the values here, all the changes. So grid data is a big object. Active row object is just one row of data. Primary contact, it's an object containing set of properties. Peter Moore is currently selected. You see this Peter Moore, it's a primary contact currently selected, and now we get its ID. Then we construct a URL and use sandbox and publish to open. F8 continues normal flow, and have opened this code. F10 helps us to proceed. F8 goes to continue. That is how you can do debugging. Also, you can do debugging using debugger word, as you probably saw in our method example here. It's a lost debugger, so developers just forgot to remove it, but it's just an example how you can do debugging. But this debugger will activate each time when you have console opened. Now I will show you some more example connected with processing logic in page fields. I will show you a simple example of creating of a computed field inside of edit page. As usual, we will use good article for this. And how to add calculated fields. Adding of calculated fields. There is a small explanation how to do it. We will use attributes property and setup of columns which depend on which influence on some target columns, and method name which will be called if any of the columns array items were changed. We will do simple case example of working with order page, and we have amount and payment amount, and I will add payment balance column, and I will show you how to do it. So we are interested in working with orders section. We will edit any order, and you see total and payment amount. And we will add one more field, which will be difference between these two numbers. Open section wizard. New decimal field. Title balance. Name balance. It will be read-only. Save, and then wait maybe for 2 minutes. During system will create automatically replace an object for order, compile it, and also create replacing client modules for this. Okay, good. We finished our compilation, and now we can check what is going on inside our sections. You see order page v2 created and replacing object for order entity. You see new balance column, and you see order page v2 item. As usual, we have some shortcomings from section wizard. We will remove all of them just to see properly that stuff that we really need to see here. Extra comma. If we will try to validate a lot of indentation warnings, if we will switch 2 times to the right, no errors, that's good. Okay, so we have one more field connected with balance column. Now we will follow our example and proceed with attributes setup and methods collection settings. We will replace 4 spaces into one tab, also in order to make it correctly validated. Good. And let me explain. Attributes settings. It's a possibility to specify additional properties of our view model columns. Also, you can use attributes to specify even virtual columns. If interested, you can search for all C# sources. Searching for virtual column, you will have a lot of examples of it. As you see, example of activity category, it's a virtual column. So you can find examples how to do virtual columns, and this example will work with physical column, but having some dependencies for this. And here is list of influencing columns. Amount or payment amount can make impact on the total balance, and if any of these values changed, our calculate balance will be called. Calculate balance is the method which takes amount, payment amount, performs subtraction, and then sets final result to the USR balance column. So this is very simple calculation. In your cases, of course, probably you will have a bit more complex, but it's just a simple example, and I think this simplicity will help you to understand it easily. So each time when some of this code changes, our method is called. And it will work good when edit page is being changed. But what if we just opened this edit page and we want to see the updated balance? And for this stuff we can use replacing, or maybe it's better to say overriding, of base on entity initialize method. You can override any base method, but by just putting your own method with the same name and some implementation. So if you have some base method, for example init, you can just put init method into your own replacing client module and implement its body, and it will work each time when system will call init method of your client, of your entity, so client module. In our case, we are overriding it by providing the same method and some functionality. In order not to harm base mechanism and page lifecycle, we have to call parent implementation of this method. Otherwise, we will do serious damage to our page and probably it will not work properly at all. So we have to perform this call parent, and then After base program code finished, we run our own calculate balance. This will mean that our calculation will be called at the early stages of the showing of the page for a user, and just after the showing of the page, our calculate balance method will be called. So this is an example of overriding of base methods. Let's save, no errors, I think. And let's check how it looks at our user interface. F5 refresh is enough for this. And we can open this page and to see how it looks. So you see that total and payment amount are equal, that's why balance is 0. But if we will start to change the values to make impact on the total value, you see that difference is appearing, and each time when we do changes in total value, the balance is recalculated. Finally, we can save changed value to the database, and we can see it in list of columns here. Balance is a new column. Okay, will it be so? As you see, we have 24 items per width. It's a 24 cells for our page. So we saved some balance. We can probably be lucky when we open. Okay, let me find a good example. Total, balance, and payment amount. We have some examples where total is different to payment amount, and this will mean that just after we open this page, you see that balance is calculated. So our overriding of on entity initialized event worked good here. And of course, if we will do some changes, it will work even better. As you see, it was recalculated and saved. Good. So you see how you can do calculation in edit pages, and also how you can run some specific logic at the beginning of your page lifecycle, just after your entity loaded its data from the server side. So please remember that calling of call parent method is very important, because if you will not do so, you will definitely damage to your page and it will not work properly. Call parent calls all the link of parent overridden implementations of your method, including its origin somewhere in base page v2. Base page v2 is some kind of very base template for all the pages that we have as edit pages in bpm'online. Also, I wanted to show you some additional example how you can do massive updates with data. We can simply create SQL script, select our package, add SQL script, name it update order balance. Installation type will be after package saved, because we have new fields here. Update order, it's a SQL query. Set USR balance equal to amount minus payment amount. Where it should be done. And we can simply execute it right here. And no errors, good. And you will see that we have a lot of balances updated for a big number of rows. As usual, we will download all this stuff to file system in order to commit it to the SVN. If you have any questions, please let me know. Okay, closed. Good. Commit to the SVN. Now I will show you example how to validate or to perform some checks in your edit page before saving data, and validation is the tool which can prevent saving if some data is not matched, doesn't match to some conditions. I will show you a very simple case of validation, and in case when you will need to see when you need to implement some your examples, I think this simple example will be very very suitable for you to understand how to do your own. We have very good article with validation example. Here is explanation of some common topics. Validation is based on the validator method. This method should be registered properly, and it should check current field values and return an object containing two properties. These two properties should be empty strings if everything is okay, and they should be not empty strings if we have some error message, and error message text should be placed as values for these object properties. Also, we have to register validate using setValidationConfig. We have to override this method, and we will use add::validator to register our validator inside of other custom validators of our page. Let's do simple examples, and simple example will be connected with opportunity edit page, and we will check that created on field must be less than the closed on field. So here is our opportunity section. Here is created on field, and here is closed on field. And we need to make special check, and do not allow to save the record if this check will fail. As usual, we need to get replacing client module. And as you know, the easiest way to get it is to run section wizard and save with no changes. Here we see our opportunity page. A lot of fields. We will do no changes here and just save. Saving will be quick because we didn't change anything with objects. Opportunity page v2 was saved. As usual, we have some shortcomings from section wizard and we will remove them because we didn't do any customizations. And now our task is to follow instructions and to create a message. Created on must be less than closed on localizable string. Created on error message, the value will be created on must be less than closed on. Okay, good. Then we will continue with methods. One method will be validator, another method will be overriding of base method set validation config. Replacing of four spaces into tabs. Validate our code. This error message will be here. And I also propose to use simple variable here just for you to understand that it's not a property name. Okay, so our validator is just a method which will work with columns. It will compare two date columns, and if due date it's a date of closure, it will be less than date of creation, then we will compose this message from localizable string, this get, and then we will use the reference to the localizable string. The most important that our validator method must return an object. And this object will contain two properties. And these property values should be set to our message. First property is intended to be used as in the window when saving the page. Another is used in the blue panel near the control. This validator will be useless until we will register it using setValidationConfig base method. It will be overriding the base function, and setValidationConfig, we overriding it, and we call parent implementation first because we also want to support all the parent validators that were created and set up for our page. And also we add two times our own validator. First is for closed on field, another is for created on. We use the same method for this. As you see, this is very easy program code, and all the logic which is connected with showing of a page with message text is hidden from us, and we just manage should system show this page or not, and should system allow to save or not. If we will return just empty strings, it will mean that everything is okay. If we return some messages here, it will mean that there is an error. Extra spaces somewhere here and here. Good. Save. Let's look how it works. Run F5. Opening any opportunity and start to play. First of all, let's play with created on date and put it somewhere to future. You see that just when we lost focus from this field, validator was executed and compared to values, and we see the message shown in blue panel here. If we will fix it again, the panel will disappear. The same with date of closure. If it will be in past, this will appear. If in present, then it's okay. Also, if we will try to save incorrect values, system will prevent it, as you see that created on must be less than closed on, and it will not allow us to save. Only if we will fix it, in this case, we will be able to save the data. That is how validation works. Also, please note that very similar validation works for mandatory fields. Like here, when we just cleared mandatory field, you see that validator message appeared, and also it will prevent us from saving it. So I think here is absolutely the same logic working. If you have questions, please let me know. I have some more topics for today. Next is configuring of controls using business rule feature. And the good news for you that probably you don't need to know how to do it manually, because starting from the version 7.10, Section Wizard is able to set up most types of business rules. So we have so business rule is typical task for managing of edit page fields. This typical task means that for some reasons we can hide or show field, we can make it mandatory or not mandatory, and for some reasons we can make a filtering in lookup fields. These tasks are faced very, very often in business project implementations as well as in base product of bpm'online. So this means that if a task is very common, developers try to implement and to create some common solution for this task. And they did it and called this solution business rules. Business rules, it's a synonym of some commonly used business logic for page fields. Business rules are applied only for page fields, and they are applied to columns, not to controls. You cannot use business rules for grid pages. And we have several types of business rules. Bind parameter for managing properties of columns, like visibility, mandatoriness, or enabled property, and filtration for filtering of lookup columns. Autocomplete rule is created but not used in base product. General procedure of manual creation rule is here, and you should use rules column use a rules collection inside of client module structure. But I think you don't need to remember it, because now Section Wizard can do it better with business rules part of the client module. I will show you example of bind parameter rule usage using Section Wizard. Let's go to context open some page and switch to our new fields. So we will manage visibility and mandatoriness of our fields. Let's imagine that we want to make secret word visible only if the job title is equal to developer. And also we want to make a start date mandatory if job title, for example, is equal to CO. Let's do it with section wizard. This is very simple, no need to program manually. Only one small disadvantage, and I will show it for you. Now, I want to open it in a different way. I want to open it from the section, just in order to avoid of corruption of my edit page structure. I found that it's possible to avoid of that section wizard always adds unnecessary items to the page structure, so I opened it from the section and then switched to the business rules directly. This will mean that I will have the same contents of div array items. Business rules add one more, and my task is to manage, okay, let it be secret word visible only for developers. If column job title equal to the lookup value, or there is a different set of variants as you see. From lookup job title, the value is developer, then we will make field visible, show field on the page. Which field? And here is disadvantage because we have to know this field name. Developers should fix it, and they didn't implement it yet, unfortunately. There were 4 minor releases passed from that moment when they introduced this feature, and still they didn't finish it properly. Probably they have lack of workforces for this secret word. Good. Enter. No errors, and just apply. One more business rule. If job title will be equal to the CO, then we will make field required. Which field? We have to use field name. As you see, I'm doing everything only with mouse. Start date will be required. Good. Save. Okay. Second will be fast. Changes applied correctly. Contact page v2 is changed again, but luckily we see no corrupted div array items. As you see here, we have only 2 business rules. Just select them and put 2 times twice, and no errors in validation. First is business rule type 0, its bind parameter. This one is also property 2. You can see description of this stuff in business rule module. business rule module has description of all these enumerations. As you see, rule type, properties, and so on. And we are interested, so no changes here, just to save it. Technically, we can not save it at all because it's already saved by section wizard, but with the awful indentations, and next time when we will do manual changes here, we will probably want to fix it. Okay, and then run a file button here. And now let's play with it. Job title empty, no secret word. Job title equal to developer, secret word appeared. CO not appeared, but when CO we have start date mandatory, when non-CO not mandatory. As you see, you can do it and play with it according to your needs, and this can really help you with the tasks when you need to hide or show some fields depending on conditions, when you need to make some fields mandatory or make some fields editable or not editable. I wanted to show you some more filter, one more example with business rules. It's a filtration of lookup fields, and we can use again section wizard for this. I will show you how to do it. We already have two columns, city and country for lookups, for account entity. And we can just drag and drop city and country. And then we can use business rules for organizing filtering of cities according to countries. Add new business rules. For filtering, we have no conditions at all. We just run with actions. Make field values filter. And here is a very tricky part because you need to know how to properly select which field to filter and which field connection will be used for filtering. Anyway, we have to run plus here. Select account city lookup field and select city country value inside of city lookup, which will be used for comparison. We will compare it as equal with column, and here we will select country column of account entity. That's all. Apply, save. Unfortunately, here we cannot avoid corruption of our div, previously created div items, but they will not disappear. They will just have some additional items that that they are extra, not needed. Let's run a 5 button. As you see, city and country are selected. Let's try to play when no country is selected. We can select any city from any country. As you see, we have different countries here. And technically, this feature allows us to set up incorrect country, which is not corresponding to city. For example, city first, country second, and we have country which is not corresponding with cities. Of course, filtering will work good, and if we will select some country like US or UK, then you will be able to select only cities from UK, from selected country. So here filtration is good, but it has some shortcomings with changes, and we can then change the country, and you see that it's not correct. We can fix it using our article connected with business rules. Setting page using business rules. Let me make it bigger, normal size. And for filtration, we have two more properties, autocomplete and autoclean. We can use these properties for filtration business rule. My button, set of useless items, two important items, then again set of useless items. We remove all unnecessary. Fixed indentations, and here is our filtration business rule, and we can also add one additional properties. Autocomplete true, autoclean true. I took this information from the article, from this one. Please note autoclean from the capital C. It's very important because of case sensitive. F5 button here. Now, if you will change the country to another one which is not corresponding to the currently selected city, city will be auto-cleaned. But if you have some city, then you change the country which corresponds with the currently selected city. Of course, city will be not cleared. And autocomplete means that when you selected some city and country is empty, your country will be filled according to selected city. As you see, Sacramento from US and United States was automatically set here. Let me show again. Liverpool from UK, select, and country was set automatically. So autoclean and autocomplete helps to improve filtering possibilities and prevent saving of values which are not corresponding to each other. I will skip autocomplete now, and if you will face that according to your tasks you need to create a bit more complicated filter, not just simple comparing one field value with another one in lookups, and maybe you have some separate conditions, we have a good answer for this. We have an article explaining how to create complicated filters. Let me explain. Page configuration and using filtration on lookup fields. This article shows how to use special lookup list config property of the attributes configuration object setting, and this is the way how you can do filtering of lookup columns, and you will use filter with unlimited complexity. Here is an example. possibility to create a filter for the owner field. You see that attributes, owner field, and then lookup list configuration object. This configuration object is used for construction of filters, and its filters property has array of items, in our case array of functions. Each function will return some filter group. And as you see, this filter group can contain different items. It can contain even embedded groups organized into and or logical conditions. So if you will face situation when you have to create a bit more complicated filter, then you just find this article, try to do it, then try to do your own as a similar solution, and you will see that it works good. Even if you fail to find the article, or you just want to do it in another way, you can also search through all the examples in base configuration. We have a lot of examples of lookup list config filters. As you see here is result lookup field. It has lookup list config, it has filters function, and you see that it creates filter groups, adds some additional filters, adds some conditions, and returns filter groups. We have a lot of examples of such filtering. As you see, you can use also not exists filter, you can use a simple filter, you can use another different conditions and so on. So this filter construction can be complex depending on your needs. When needed, you will know how to do with these filters. More than 80 different examples we have in our base configuration code. In some cases, we just use base filter generate module owner filter. It's a special pre-designed filter from this base module, and this filter will just, okay, let me show you this module base. Base filter generate module. Base filter generate module. This filter is very easy, and you see that it has owner filter, which creates new filter is not null, new filter compared with parameter, and returns this filter group. So it's like a generally used filter. That's why it's implemented once and then used at many places. We can see how many owner filter is used. Maybe 20 times, 39 times in different pages. These owner filter is used, as you see. So we can do it once, and this base filter generate module, I think, yes, it's used in dependencies list. Good. Okay, so if needed, you know where to search for good solutions. And now we are almost finished our today's session and our basic training. And the last material which I wanted to tell you will be connected with transfer of changes between development environments using SVN. As usual, your first developer, for example, commits his changes to the SVN. No matter if you're using development in file system or not, you will have to update your package from the SVN, probably using local developer environment, probably using update package from repository. So anyway, you have to update your package from the SVN. And there are several steps to be done in order to apply these package changes on your environment, on your developer environment. Some of these steps are already automated. So generation of source code is already automated. Applying of database structure, loading data items, and running of SQL scripts is automated just after you updated package from the SVN. But you need to know that compiling all is not performed automatically, so you will have to do it manually. Now it means that all the operation that you should do after you updated package from the SVN, you need to compile all items. But if you will face in complex cases, if you will face troubles with updated objects, you can see these troubles by using of last error message text. Or if you will face troubles with updating and running of SQL scripts, you will also see it by option needs to be installed in database and last error message text. And sometimes it can happen that you will fail to update, so system will fail to properly apply your data items and you will see error message text. In this case, you will have to apply these settings yourself in order to make all the system up to date according to development repository. So it's just for your knowledge then that when you load packages, it means that you generate sources. It's done automatically, loading database structure, data items, records, and SQL scripts running. And there are settings that perform this automation. In inner web config file, we have settings. Auto update DB structure, auto install SQL script, auto install package data, and auto regenerate schema sources. By default, all of them are true. It means that big level of automation here, but if errors will appear, you know that you will face to fix it yourself according to the error message. The most probable reason is some records, let's say trash records in database, or lack of records in database, which will lead to some foreign key exceptions. Anyway, you will fix it, I think, and then you will know how to do it. So the only manual operation when you uploaded your downloaded packages from the repository is compilation of all the items in order to apply it to the IIS server. So these difficulties are only for developer and are only on developer environments. If you're interested in transfer of changes from development environment to test and to production in order to check how it works, there is much more simple solution. Right button click on your package or packages if there are several ones, then export package to archive. You will receive an archive file at your download folder. Here it is. This archive file contains gzip file and contains metadata of our package fully. This metadata has some size, and then we have to load this package on our target environment. Go to System Designer, Applications, Installed Applications, and then Install from File. We will have to select our file, and just after we click on Open button, system will start to load our package and to apply it. It is strongly recommended to perform a full database backup before you will load your packages. And also, it is recommended, if you will do it on production, it is recommended to do it in non-business time, because loading can take maybe 5 and maybe 15 minutes in complex cases. Also, please note that it's better to load packages only if you're fully sure that development is over and you just want to test, or when test is finished, then you are sure that your package is correct and it's worthy to load in on production. Anyway, it's possible to load it several times, no problem. Only changed items will be loaded, so usually we load it on several times on test environment, fix all the items, then save again from developer, load it on test again, checking that everything is okay, and only after it's recommended to load it on production. This procedure is explained in development process organization. So you develop something, you produce packages, load it on test. If there are errors, you do the same several times, and you got fully tested packages, get it and install on production. And installation procedure is absolutely the same for local and for cloud-based environments now. It's a good advantage in comparison with previous versions. And finally, you will have installed package. This installed package will be not editable on this target environment. So for test and production, it's considered that no sense to edit these packages, and they will be protected. So no ability to easily edit it. If you need to modify something, you will have to do it on developer environment, export again, and load on target again. And finally, that is how you can transfer your changes to production environment. It is recommended to do backup operation before any serious updates of your target environments. This will significantly save your time if something will go wrong, because of course you can fix and load corrected package, but in some cases maybe it's better to recover database from the backup file than working with the fixes. So it's just an advice to make your development safer. Now my material is over, and I have a big thank you for all of you for all your time that you spend for our training. Just 2 minutes more, please answer a small poll in our application. I'm asking you to click and answer in this small poll about quality of our training, about your general satisfaction, and also about the next poll will be connected about your satisfaction with training programs. Please mark your satisfaction from the training, and then I will also give you one more question, so it will not spend too much of your time. Thanks for those who did his choice. Okay, thank you for the first answers. And one more poll for mark of a training program, please. This will help me to understand what should be improved, and should we have some additional topics or maybe something else to be changed. So we always search for the ways to make our job and our trainings more perfect and more interesting for you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your remarks. And thank you for your poll answers. If you still have some questions, probably you can ask using email d.gamora@bpm'online.com. As usual, you will receive home tasks today, and then tomorrow you will receive video recordings, full email with all video recordings and all useful materials connected with our training. So I thank you for your time, thank you for your efforts, and thank you for your support of BPM Online platform. Hope to see some of you on our advanced training, which will be held in 2 weeks. And our training for today is over. Thank you very much and goodbye.